Number one, if you have someone that you want a family home, fine. But you know there are those who are, how can I label them? Who are very troublesome, who you know for a fact, as soon as you die, they will try to create havoc and chaos. But then the rest of the group can be able to hold this as a family home. Your first option is to not give ownership to that person who is troublesome. You do not do that. You take away ownership from such a person because you know they're going to be problematic. You know for a fact they're going to sabotage your intention, right? And so that the first option, you take away ownership from that person. But does this mean now that this one no longer has entitlement? Because remember, again, they are your kids. I know they have a soft spot. So as much as you know they are troublesome, you still want them to have refuge in case things change in the future and they need a place to stay. So first option then being, you could then say they do have a right to live on the property. Your attorney will know how to structure this if they know how these things work. You say the others get ownership. I trust those ones. They are responsible children. I have seen them. I have lived with them. I know what kind of children they are. But this one, as much as I want him or her to have a place to stay, ownership away from him or her, finish and clear. So that, number one, these ones, when this troublesome one is still alive, they can't do anything with the property as well, right? Even if they change their minds. And this one will always have a place to stay. Option number one. Option number one. And then option number two, and these options, guys, depend, like I'm saying to you, family dynamics, very important. You cannot just mirror another family's way of structuring things. You have your own kids. You don't know what or how the other kids behave. That's why every time you go for planning, you sit down with this person, you draw a picture for them. This is my family dynamics. I've got this child, I've got this child, in most instances, we often know your kids' professions because you have to tell us your story so that we can be able to guide you accordingly. Because if you have a child we know is this way, we can suggest options that you can use, right? So that they can have this home and it's going to stay intact and in the family. So that's why it's always important to have a thorough discussion before you say to people, this is what I want you to write down, because that possibly could not be the best option for your family. Okay, so that was option number one. And then option number two is you just take away ownership from everybody. No one has ownership. And you've got two ways of doing this, which means it's either now you're going to set up a trust during your lifetime or when you have passed away. And then that property, you're going to simply say it's going into the trust for their benefit. And in the trust, there's going to be clear terms there. Right? Guys, this information that I'm giving to you, I'm not going to repeat it again. So you put it in a trust. In that particular trust, you stipulate conditions to make people responsible. When I say to make people responsible, those that will be living there, because remember, the property is not theirs, right? You just give them a benefit. The property belongs to the trust. Now, if let's say rates and taxes are not being paid, these debts are not going to accrue to individuals because the individuals don't own anything here. They're going to accrue to who? They're going to accrue to the trust. So now you put in conditions. You make anyone and everyone who stays there to take care of everything that needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, if they do not, they are chucked out or they have to find another form of accommodation. You have to do these things creatively. Because if this person stays there or people stay in that property and they don't want to pay rates and taxes, it's going to be a problem for the trust. You've got trustees, right? trustees are going to tell them directly and based on terms and conditions that you as much as you probably will not be paying rent, but you got to take care of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And if you do not, the trustees have the right to chuck you out of that property. You have to think about these things very creatively. This is the second option that you have regarding your family home. This option, you then have to decide what kind of trust you're going to use. And this one, you sit down with someone to understand how both of these trusts operate. For example, we know that the testamentary trust only comes into operation when you've died. But we've got the inter vivos one, which is readily available and is going to inherit if you wanted to inherit the property. So you just have to choose which one is best. And the reason why you can never make this choice from information such as this is because you have to understand it from the perspective of financial implications and other things that need to be considered. Okay. The other option that you have, if you really want this family thing to work, is put it under a company. Also a company in a similar way as that of the trust. And the reason why this is significant is that, again, a property belonging to a company is a property under a company, right? And so it means that, it must be operated in that regard. A property, even if you live on it, if it's owned by a different entity, you've got to toe the line. Because whatever problems that come about when it comes to that property, they're going to be a problem of the company itself. So this is also another option that you could exercise. I was thinking of something just now. And then, gosh, I forgot this thing. And then there's the people who also have the farms who inside of that farmland, there is a family home. They also want this one to be preserved. You see, when it comes to you, if you have such a land, it's just that I don't know measurements of farmlands, but they're often very big. And you could have different things that you can do inside of the property. Now, when it comes to you and your family, you don't have the privilege of beating around the bush here. You don't have a choice. You've got to go sit down with someone. Farmlands in South Africa can never be owned by more than one person. If they are owned by more than one person, it's a decision that rests on the government or the Department of Agriculture. And it's a very difficult, or how can I put it? It's not going to be a very easy decision to make for the department to say yes for 4 people or 6 siblings to be co-owners of a farmland. And that becomes a problem. And others don't want to wait for that process. That process, if you've never embarked on it, it does take a bit of time. And it takes some amount of money because that's an application that has to be made. And the decision rests on the department. What if the department says, no, we don't allow for these 6 kids to co-own this farmland that you've left behind? What then becomes the option of the family? They've got a few options. They've got the first option, which is to sell. And believe you me, in most instances, they're going to meet an executor who encourages them to sell the property because farmlands are very lucrative. You get what I'm saying? So the first thing, I've never seen a family that has a farmland who hasn't been encouraged to sell when they're about to inherit and there are more than one. There's always that encouragement, right? And so, which is why a lot of people lose it as soon as you pass away. So, and then the second option, the other thing that you can do when it comes to you as the person who owns such a farmland, which has a family home that you want to still stay in the family, you've got to think about options such as your trusts, such as what do you call your companies, whatever it is. And you, as someone who has a farmland, these are things you can do when you're still alive. These are things you can do when you're still alive, because one, again, guys, it's expensive to move properties from the deceased to, obviously transfer fees are expensive, right? They never come cheap. And then you can imagine if a farmland, if it is a farmland, farmlands are often at a high value because number one, they've got much bigger square meters. They are hectares, in fact. So they cost much more. And when it comes to property transfers, it depends on the value of the property. This is also why some people often resort to selling these farmlands. Because one, if you leave a farmland in your own estate, there are people who have farmlands that cost anything above 3 million, 7 million, etc., going up. I know there's a family and they didn't know this. They only found out when they lost their parent. Last parent, their farmland was worth 12 million. Family doesn't have any money. Literally, the people are just working ordinary jobs. Somebody just passes away. The next thing, they are stuck with the property that's valued at 12 million. And not just any property, it is a farmland. Problem number one, executors fees, how much are they? Number two, you're looking at transfer fees, how much are they? You're looking at taxes, how much are they? You're looking at all of these things. So if you're someone who has a farmland, I always say you don't have a choice, Wena. If you want this farmland to stay in this family, you are obligated to be planning your affairs. You're obligated to be doing something about it. And guys, one of the biggest problems you have is to not know your value and your worth. I don't think you understand it. A lot of you don't understand that you are worth a lot. Because you don't have probably money in the bank, you often think, I'm not worth anything. Guys, you're worth a lot of things because of the things you have in your name. That's why you're worth a lot. We value one property, it gets to 3 million, we value another one. That is what you are worth. And you need to understand this so that you can do the proper planning when it comes to this. So farmlands, you have to. And also, I say you have to look into this because maybe you need to sort it out yourself when you are still alive. For example, move it yourself from your personal capacity to an entity now that you're still alive, especially if you know your kids are not going to be able to afford to do this. And when I say kids, guys, forgive me, I also talk about adult children. So you really need to know what to do here as someone who has this type of property, because otherwise it's going. It is going, and guys, it's not easy owning a farmland. I don't know about other people, but I know people who have had a difficult time acquiring such lands. And so if your desire is for your family not to lose it, you better be planning, best be arranging, you best be putting things in place so they don't lose it. Because you cannot leave it to 5 children and expect that they're going to own it. Trust me, they will not in most instances, and they will not afford to do anything with that property. And the best then option often is they must just sell it, it must go. Meaning that they must sell and take what they get and then go their separate ways. Out of the window is the idea, is the desire, is the narrative of a family home kind of situation, right? And the nicest thing about farmlands is that they're big enough for a family to stay here and people can build and still work on the farmland. And so if they lose it, that's it. So the wishes, I know a lot of people have wishes and they have a lot of way of thinking. Guys, often, I just have to say it as bluntly as I can, often the information you guys have very inaccurate. Very inaccurate, and I'm not sure where it stems from, where it comes from, but it's extremely inaccurate. And that's what beats a lot of people, or that's what tends to be a disadvantage when people lose someone, is that the information they have and the people that passed away, the information they had was not it. That's why they were so relaxed. That's why they did not see a need to go anywhere, to do anything, because they were fed information that don't make sense.